Hello and welcome once again to Mission TV, a special edition. I'm Melissa Summers and we're broadcasting live for the 59th session of the General Conference in Atlanta, Georgia at the Georgia World Congress Center. We are having so much fun and I hope you're having fun with us. I'm trying to include you in everything, especially all of our world features and missionaries. Right now I have a very special friend of mine. We used to work together. Actually with her husband, but she was a part of it too. Her name is Samantha Nelson, and she is with the Hope of Survivors. Hi.
Hi. Good to be with you, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
You can tell I'm excited.
Yeah.
Now listen, the Hope of Survivors is a very, very special ministry, and if you would, just kind of explain exactly what it is.
Well, it's a very unique ministry. It's a nurturing and healing ministry. We provide support for women and men, teenage boys and girls who have been abused by a pastor or someone else in the role of spiritual authority. So it's unfortunately a very necessary ministry, but that's the healing part of it. We also provide educational seminars to pastors and church leaders, and we work with all denominations all around the world.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're not just targeting, so let's say like a pastor who has emotionally or even sexually influenced. I mean, am I understanding this correctly? Explain it.
It's someone in the role of spiritual authority who has taken advantage of that position of power and trust to abuse someone who was more vulnerable in his congregation, whether that would be a vulnerable adult woman who perhaps had childhood abuse in her past or some other trauma that made her vulnerable, or a young child. Mm-hmm. And it's not just with pastors though, because it's anyone who has that spiritual power and authority. So it could be an elder or a deacon or a Bible worker or one of our Christian school teachers.
Right. Okay. Now I know you're not a psychologist, but how is it that someone, let's say they're the same age, this person is an adult, that person is an adult. How is it that they're influenced? It's like they have their own mind.
Right. But the position of power and trust placed upon those in spiritual authority, like a pastor, is much greater. And even in the Bible where it tells us, let not many of you become teachers, my brethren, because God will hold you more accountable. The spiritual leader always bears the responsibility for maintaining proper and appropriate boundaries. And what we see most often in these situations is perhaps a woman will come to her pastor for counseling. And if the pastor is not a godly man, an upright man of integrity, he may take advantage of her vulnerability.
So that is the thing. Because of the position, yes, they're weaker and they're more vulnerable.
Correct.
Okay.
Because we extend to pastors a blanket automatic trust that we don't extend to everybody else. You wouldn't walk up to one of the cameramen here and just pour out your life story and talk about your abuse or the pain of the past.
Right.
But you do that with a pastor because you expect them to be men of integrity, men who can lead you closer to God and help you heal. And
that makes a lot of sense, because I have heard, women that were given Bible studies to men and they end up in relationships.
Right.
So it's not just women.
No, we have worked with all different situations. We've worked with male pastors abusing females, male pastors abusing males, female pastors abusing men and women. I mean, it's across the board. It's a power situation, and it's sin that takes place within that situation of power.
Okay, well, I can tell that, this is really a heart passion of yours. Is it a personal experience?
Well, yes. My pastor abused me years ago, and it was the same type of situation. I thought I was the only one this ever happened to. I had gone to him for counseling about the abuse in my past, and he took advantage of that vulnerability to control me, basically, and to engage me into a sexual relationship. And after I got out of that, and my husband and I healed from that, we really felt impressed that God wanted us to start this ministry, because when my husband was searching for information or help or something to show me that this was abuse, there was nothing that he could find.
Okay.
And so we really felt God calling us to start this and to provide biblical truth. I'm not a licensed psychologist, but I am a board certified biblical counselor.
Okay.
We base our counseling model on the truth that is found in God's word, and try to encourage. That's part of what makes it so healing, is because we're drawing people back into a relationship with Christ And, it is easier to go evangelize someone off the street who's never heard of Jesus than it is to take someone who has been betrayed by a spiritual leader and that relationship with God has been damaged and lead them back into a loving relationship with Christ.
That's a serious mission field.
It is.
Okay, how long ago did this happen in your life?
For me, it was in 99 and 2000. So it's been over a decade.
Okay, so I hope you don't mind me asking, and if you do, you'll we can pass. But were you married when this happened?
Oh yes. Yeah. My husband was with me. He didn't know what was going on. He knew that there was a change in me. He knew that all of a sudden I had become suicidal and I was practicing self-injury behavior. He's like, what is going on?
Okay, practicing what?
Cutting, self-injury behavior.
Okay. So you just didn't have an outlet to,
I felt like I couldn't tell anybody because I had been abused growing up and I had not been able to tell anyone or receive healing from that. And I'd grown up in an alcoholic home where we learned to keep the dirty little secrets that go on. I didn't have any sense of being able to protect myself or keep up firm boundaries. So when the pastor started grooming me, he groomed us for a long period of time, becoming our friend first, engaging us in all kinds of activities, Bible study, dinners.
So you say us, so you and your husband.
My husband was part of that.
So he was gaining your husband's trust.
Exactly. We were both victims. I mean, he wasn't physically or sexually abusive towards Steve. That was just toward me, but the emotional and spiritual abuse was still there.
So it was almost like, trust me while I take your wife.
Exactly. And so when I had gone to him and I shared with him about being raped and the tragedy that I had experienced there, he knew that I didn't know how to defend myself emotionally or physically, and he took advantage of that. And my first plan A for everything was to say no, and I did say no. But when that didn't stop it, then I started making up excuses. I was very ill at the time too, which was another vulnerability. And I told him, I said, you don't want me, you want your wife. I'm very sick, I'm gonna die. I felt like I was gonna die at the time. And that didn't work either. So after plan B, I didn't know what else to do. And so I felt like I had to go along with it. He used scripture to control and manipulate me. He would preach sermons from the pulpit that were directed toward me and my husband to try to get my husband to let me go so I could be with the pastor.
Why do you think he targeted you?
I wish I knew. There was an interesting confession that he made. He said that he set his sights on me the moment we walked through the church doors the first Sabbath. So there was intent there. There was premeditation. We heard from another member of the congregation who knew us well that right after we started coming back to church there, he had gone to them and he had asked them, so what's the story with this couple, And they're like, oh, that's Steve and Samantha. They're inseparable, they're a close couple.
So now it became his challenge.
Yeah.
So, okay, now how long after that? You apparently dealt with this for some years, you and Steve.
Well, the actual sexual abuse took place over a period of a few months.
Okay, but the emotional?
The emotional took place for probably a year to a year and a half, including, if you include the grooming process before anything became physical or sexual.
Okay.
Probably about a year.
Okay. Now, when did you say, okay, this is enough, I'm going to stop being a victim, this is a mission that I need to share?
Well, I wanted out of it, and I kept trying to get out of it all along, but it just was more and more entangled. There was intercessory prayer of others, and then when the pastor's wife found out, she reported it, and he was fired. And that
the pastor's wife?
Yes, she found out and reported him, so he was terminated. But God really did an interesting thing for me. Because of some problems, medical problems I had had, I should have had a surgery when I was a teenager, but they never did it. So here I am in the middle of this abuse by the pastor, and I have this surgery. And I had a very prolonged recovery period, which was God's way of giving me physical distance from the pastor. Because by this time, Steve knew the pastor wasn't allowed in our home, but the pastor was stalking us, and he stalked us for a number of years. He threatened to kill my husband.
So he had emotional issues.
Well, yeah, you could say that. But that physical distance, my recovery really gave me the opportunity to grow close to Steve again and to realize that this was a very bad thing that was happening and to help get out of it. And then it wasn't until 2 years after all that ended, and Steve and I had both gone through some biblical counseling courses and just really got more heavily involved in Bible study, and God really healed us. And it was at that point when we were just sitting in our living room one night talking about, wow, look what God has done. And Steve was the one who felt really impressed that we should develop a website and share truth with others. And we thought, if we could help just one person, then it would be worth it, like Joseph's story in Genesis 50:20, you know? And we didn't realize that now there would be thousands of victims worldwide.
Now, did you realize that you were, in fact, you and Steve, missionaries, and this was your mission field?
Once we started the Hope of Survivors, we did, yes.
Because, you know, so many people don't realize that, you know, the ministry that they do is a mission field, and that's a mission. When we say missionaries, God commissioned all of us to be missionaries in whatever part of the world and whatever area of expertise God gives us through experience. So how do you feel now, you and Steve? How are things? Well, I really know, but I'm, you know, I see, you know.
Steve and I are wonderful. Our marriage is better than ever. And he serves with me when he can with the Hope of Survivors, because he's a full-time pastor in the Illinois Conference. And it's a very busy but challenging and rewarding work that we do through the Hope of Survivors. I mean, we've worked with victims all over the world of all different denominations. It truly is an outreach mission field, like you said.
Wow. Now, how can people contact you? And this is for both men and women.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Go to the website, thehopeofsurvivors.com.
Hopeofsurvivors.
Thehopeofsurvivors.com.
Okay, thehopeofsurvivors.com. Okay.
We also have the website available in Spanish and in Romanian right now.
Really? You know what? There is hope. There's hope in God. There's hope in the mission. And we are commissioned to spread this gospel, and we can reach each person, wherever we are, through the experiences that the Lord allows us to have. They're not just for us, it's in fact for others. I'm Melissa Summers. We are live from the Georgia World Congress Center in Atlanta, Georgia with Mission TV, a special edition. We'll be right back. Bye.
Oh, there is power